In this video I will show you 7 things good Catan players never do and also what they do instead. And I based this list on coaching more than 50 Catan players of all levels around the world. This list includes tips on placement, strategy, trading, tactical pacing and much more. So let's get started. And the first mistake good Catan players never make is fixating on strategies with no or limited winning options. Some extreme examples are players who always need to take all 5 resources, even if they have to take an extremely weak spot to do so. Or players who always take a bunch of the same resource and then the matching 2-for-1 board. I found that people do this because they don't know better alternatives. So here are 6 of the best. Full or cheap places on ore, wheat and sheep hexes to buy development cards and build cities efficiently. Hybrid or cheap adds a bit of wood or brick to this mix, to be able to build roads and settlements more reliably. The city plus road setup builds on ore and wheat to build cities, and on wood and brick to build a lot of roads, forming a 10-point plan of 4 cities and the longest road. The road builder focuses more heavily on the longest road and settlement expansions. They have a ton of wood and brick, combined with a little bit of the remaining resources. They often lack other resources as well, but they rarely produce everything because they focus so much on wood and brick. Port strategies have a lot of a specific resource, and after they get on the 2-for-1 port, they become quite flexible. The last but certainly not the least popular is the 5 resource strategy. You simply get all 5 resources to spend your resources in the most efficient way. You can also combine these strategies, like a city plus road setup with a port strategy, and I really recommend you to do so. This is how strategies position themselves. You have full or cheap and hybrid or cheap that specialize for the largest army, while the road builder and the city plus road setup specialize for the longest road. The 5 resource strategy and port strategies, however, take advantage of the specialized setups having a slow start to the game, as they can play for either the army or the road, but they are less well equipped to focus on them. But if players commit mistake number 2, knowing popular strategies doesn't even matter. Because really good Catan players always predict opponents' placements. When I coach my students at the start, I often notice that they make decisions before truly digesting the board. They see a good spot and just build there without checking if there could be better options. Because you can only determine what is the best first position if you know which spots are still open once you come back to make your second placement. It's also crucial to analyze which resources will be valuable in this game. It's so important and many players just don't do it. And here's how good Catan players look at the game. Ore and wheat naturally have a higher value than the other resources. But other resources can have high value too. It sometimes happens, for example, that there's only one reliable spot to get sheep. It makes that spot crucial. Because if nobody has sheep, but you do, you can easily advance your game with a couple of trades. So here's what I look for when the game starts. The number each resource has and their trade values. The location of each hex, the location of the desert hex, the highest producing spots, the location of the port, especially the 2-for-1 ports of resources with low trade values, which resource combinations are a lot on the board. There could be many spots with wood-wheat combinations, for example, strong coastal spots, wood-brick traps, and at last, largest army and longest road options. Then I predict where everyone goes, and only then I decide where I go. Another mistake I see good Catan players never make is this. Good Catan players don't make road blunders. I see many beginner players point their first road towards the center of the board, because they see a strong spot they're eager to build on next, not realizing these spots will be taken by their opponents. Instead, good Catan players point their first road to the coast, because they know that's where the open spots will be. For a player with a lot of wood brick, it's often a good idea to take a more risky approach and try to predict which would be open after all 8 placements are done, because they actually have the resources to get there quickly. And they need the additional production opposed to players who have high ore and wheat, because it's easier for them to increase their production by building a city. Or wheat players, however, point their roads to the coast, because they just need guaranteed spots, so they will be able to build their settlements later to get to 10 points. Another mistake I only see bad Catan players make is focusing on the easy moves first. And I define easy moves as the purchases that come to you naturally. For example, an ore cheap player that would be buying development cards. But for a wood brick player that would be building roads and settlements. As an ore cheap player, you don't have to trade your valuable ore for a sheep to buy a development card. But you might want to trade it for a brick to build a road. Strong Catan players focus on the tough moves first. If we use the example of Orvy Cheap again, you focus on building a strategic settlement as your top first move. These moves take longer to complete, so you might fall behind the production. But the upside is that you don't get stolen from as much, because it seems like you have made less progress than your competitors. Well, they will get stuck later, after they've completed their easy goals first. Catan is all about keeping the right pace and making the right move at the right time. And if you have a good start, people will block you, steal from you and won't trade with you. So it's quite an advanced concept, but only the best players don't make the following mistake, which is don't run away from the pack until you're self-sufficient. But what does this mean? The pack in Catan means that all players roughly have the same amount of victory points, production and odds of winning. Being self-sufficient, however, means having all the right production, space, flexibility and momentum to complete your 10-point plan. This is usually achieved after building a city for increased production and a settlement on a port that helps you solve resource imbalances. So you want to have this kind of base before you go out and try to complete your 10-point plan. For example, if you have a ton of wheat and low ore, you want a wheat port or 3-for-1 port to fix your imbalances. But if you have 4 settlements down and no cities, you don't want to go for the largest army because you need to spend your ore and wheat towards the city as well. Unless you're an ore with cheap player, because then this situation is perfect. In the first stages of the game, people will trade with each other, but in the mid and late game, not so much. It's another reason why you want to be self-sufficient at that point of the game. Another mistake good Catan players don't make, but bad ones do, is looking for reasons to not make trades and other types of deals. Catan is a 4-player game. If you make a deal with someone, there's 2 people who are not profiting and there's 2 people who are, and you are one of them. Essentially, if you can make a 4-player game into a 2-player game, your odds of winning would be twice as high, wouldn't they? Instead of looking for reasons to not make a deal like this trade gives the other a slight advantage or it's bad for the table, great Catan players instead look for reasons to why a deal actually works well. But that doesn't mean they take a deal at face value. You often need to look outside the box to make something work. Inside the box, you have typical deals like 1 ore for 1 wheat, or 2 for 2 or 2 for 1. But outside the box, you also have more complicated agreements like, if you take this deal now, I will trade you the next 2 ores I produce on this 9 for a card of your choice. However, many Catan players don't even realize they make this next mistake. And it's actually the hidden beauty of Catan. Many people, when they play Catan for the first time, think that Catan is just a lucky wait for your turn type of game. In fact, I used to think this myself. But once I realized you can do much more on opponents' turns, this game became fun and my win rate skyrocketed. One of the key things many good Catan players do is track the cards in their opponent's hands, as well as constantly evaluate their opponent's plans, strengths and weaknesses. In fact, you'll most likely get better deals on your opponent's turns than on your own. But you can also discourage your opponents from making deals with each other by table talking. You could say things that make them realize the trade is bad for them in the long term, even though it looks good for them on the short term. Board awareness is what differentiates even the top players from good players, let alone beginners. But building board awareness starts with strategy. And if you truly want to understand Catan's strategy and tactics, I recommend you watch this video next.